Thank you for that very long introduction. So I'm going to talk to you today about patient and public involvement in platform trials, but also in pretty much any trial, but particularly when you're getting into complex designs. And this is all done with ICU patients, but at the same time, I think the principles from people I interact with are very much similar across diseases. So just some disclosures. So some of the funding, particularly want to thank the Health Research Board who have funded our network on all of this PPI activity. And I guess I just want to start by thanking first our patients, families and members of the public. The people we work with are people who have been in our ICUs, they've been in our trials, and they still come back and try and improve research for future patients. Unfortunately, none of our members could present today, so I'm really thankful to present on their behalf. I also want to thank just members of our team who are involved and the 3 platform trials and InFact working groups. And there's people like Heather and Timo, Madiha and Neve in the room who do a lot of this PPI. So I think it's just a lot of people are involved. So just some definitions, although hopefully everyone knows. So when we talk about involvement, this is research with or by members of the public, not to, for, about them. It is strictly not participation in a trial. And it's a 2-way partnership. So you're coming to meet patients at an equal level to discuss designing and implementing trials. I love to pair involvement with engagement because I think it really adds because you can reach more people. So that's generally a 1-way communication. So either the public gives you information, so you do surveys, focus groups, or you give them information. So you try and disseminate your trial more. You maybe have an open day, so those sort of things. So this background is a bit ICU focused, but I guess it's more about the trajectory. So we know still that we're not involving patients and public enough. But if we look at the evolution of PPI, for the longest time, patients and public were only involved in trials as participants. Then at some point, there was a bit of a realization, oh God, maybe we should ask their opinion. But not everyone maybe got on board with it. And I think areas like cancer really excelled as they do in research. But some people in ICU like John and Al and others kind of adopted this early on. And then what I can see since I started doing PPI in 2019, 2020 as a mid-career researcher, you can see the exponential growth. Now every new domain, every new trial wants to engage patients. And that's probably a 2-fold thing. First of all, I've had research tell me, I didn't believe in it, but then I came to a meeting and, I can really see how this can benefit my research and how important it is to understand their experience. And then funders started to mandate for it. So you can't get a grant now without doing PPI. So that always helps when you have policy and funders there, along with seeing the value directly. So just a bit of what we've done. So in kind of end of 2019, we started to develop a PPI group in Ireland for our Irish network. And this led into 2020 when we started to meet. Of course, with COVID, we moved online. So we had 8 to 10 patients and their families who'd been in our ICU. And we had a great research coordinator, Kathy, who engaged with these patients and their families and got them on board. So we started to meet them quarterly online, and they helped us on our grant teams. They joined our network committees. I say that we provided training, and we did, but we didn't provide formal training because this is something I got questioned a lot. So I share formal training opportunities, and there are some wonderful ones out there. But the way we've always done it is at the start of a meeting, we introduce a concept, we go through it in detail, and then we go to the discussion, and we build at each meeting. Sometimes members will email me and say, okay, let's backtrack. I need a bit more about adaptive trials. Of course, we spent a lot of time, but that's kind of how we started to get people up and running. We obviously offer reimbursement, very, very critical if you're doing PPI. People deserve to be offered reimbursement for their time and travel. And we're kind of in this transitional phase now where, like with everyone in PPI, and this is something that you really can't take personally if you're doing PPI, like patients and their families are generally volunteering. They have other things in their lives. Sometimes health things come up. So they might be with your group for a while, but then maybe they can't be involved anymore. And that's just part of the process. So at the moment, we're in a phase where we're onboarding new members, but this is a bit slow because we have some members who are very used to trials, some new members. So we're trying to figure out how it's all going to work. And we're really aware that we really don't have the diversity that we need. So we don't have those underserved communities. So we're really trying to go out there and get that improved. So this is just an example of all the things, well, not all, I stopped adding to this about 2 years ago, that we've discussed, but you can see there's everything on there. And this could be in any area of research: consent, dissemination. We talked a bit about clusters, which is another complex design, SWOT, biosampling, ethics. Our PPI group helped us change something that our ethics committee weren't happy about, because from a patient perspective, they felt strongly about it. So the value that the patient voice has when communicating to ethics and regulators is far beyond what you have as a researcher. Some of the impact is, obviously our outcome measures, our patient-facing documents. This was one of our PPI members from COVID who actually by themselves went in the media and talked about how clinical research had actually helped him, which was quite phenomenal. Identifying research importance, supporting funding applications. But I guess this is really metric-y type stuff, but the real thing that you really learn is you start to understand what the experience is like for an ICU patient. So as John said, we're now understanding that critical care and acute care is a continuum. That does not stop when they leave the ICU door, and they're often not supported after that. So they're the sort of things that you learn, how important it is for you as a doctor and a researcher to communicate carefully, transparently and clearly to patients, because they're frightened, their family are frightened, and you're asking them to take a risk in a trial at the end of the day. Of course, they may benefit, but at the end of the day, it's still uncertain for them. So that's kind of the Irish stuff. So we have that going on for 6 years now. We've had a lot of impact. The group are just unbelievable people. But we started to look at this internationally. And this kind of started with Remap CAP. We set up a working group of members. That's just the Remap sites, but we had maybe about 10 countries represented in the group. And this was really researchers and coordinators who are interested in PPI. I think at the time we had one patient advocate who was really involved. Then with Panther, which came along after, we set up a group like this from the start, which was amazing to actually integrate it into the very start of a trial. And then we had a really nice INFAC group on Federation of Trials that Timo leads. And that's going really well. And this is all about sharing resources, learning, collaborating. And it's also supported other countries in setting up their own PPI groups. So then this started to evolve into now what is an international PPI program. And just some advice, so start as early as possible. So now we actually have, before someone applies for funding for a new domain, they come to the PPI group for advice. They get letters of support, they have co-applicants, but they also resolve things early. Also during setup, we develop now for new platforms comprehensive PPI strategies, how we're going to deliver PPI appropriately, and we co-develop that with our PPI members. All consent forms are now reviewed by patients and families. They're now PPI members in critical care, which didn't happen before, are on international trial steering committees, management groups at the really highest level of governance. And this is amazing to see. And then in the other side, putting all this together, we decided to establish an international group of patients and families, because we felt we have these trial steering committees with investigators from many countries. Why not have a PPI group that could do the same thing? And we had a bit of a discussion, and we decided that we were going to try and harmonize this group. We were going to federate it, because we had Remap, Panther, and Practical, very similar patient populations, very similar research, very similar objectives. So we decided to form an international group across the 3 trials. We have about 10 to 12 members, just depending on different meetings, and they're from Ireland, the UK, Australia, Pakistan, and Canada. We have some interest from Europe. There's a lot of good activity in Japan, but they're still setting up the PPI, and Brazil are also interested in the PPI group. So we meet bi-monthly online. And I just think from the last 2 years of this group, platform trials are probably the ideal place to have PPI, because every single meeting, we have too much stuff to go on agenda. We have new domains coming. We have domains that are closing. We have consent forms that are being updated. So there's just a never-ending list of things to discuss. And then the other side of it is our members came in not knowing what a platform trial was. And now, 2 years on, they have developed that knowledge, but still keeping their own personal experiences at the core. So it really is just a great mechanism in its perpetual nature. And as I mentioned, they're co-authors and on committees. So this is just a paper we've recently submitted. A lot of people in the audience are co-authors. So we've kind of developed a model that we're using at the moment. So we have our national PPI e-groups. In Ireland, Pakistan probably have one of the most active groups and programs, and they just released a toolkit which will help anyone setting up a group. And what we have is members from each of those groups are on the global PPI group. And then we have these PPIE working groups more for researchers. And then what we have now is on REMAP-CAP ITSC and Panther ITSC and also the management group, we have 1 to 2 of our global members. So there's kind of all this bi-directional communication, and we've had more interest from Australia with more members joining. So this is just the impact that we did up for this publication, because we're kind of a few years now on the go, and you can see that they've reviewed 5 adaptive trials, 15 treatment domains, primary outcomes, they've produced videos, they're helping us disseminate our results that are coming out in the coming days, and they helped actually decide what we would use in a statistical analysis plan, what patient factors we should consider, and they were involved in this really complex consensus project with Danny, and that was just really interesting, and this kind of always reminded me about how much you need to keep your bias in PPI, because I had been involved in the consensus project and I saw the researcher votes. So I knew their opinion, I knew my opinion, but I had to come to the PPI meeting with none of that because I wanted them to tell what they thought. And actually they voted very differently on a question. And then that was brought back to the researchers and the researchers changed their mind. So it was all just a very interesting process, but you just have to be careful in how you present things. So these are just some examples. So these are our results summaries that we developed for REMAP-CAP with CAM. They're videos. One of our PPI members co-developed a video for participants, but also to train researchers on how to have a consent discussion. So that was really cool to see what she said. And simple things like introducing yourself that weren't in the script, and some articles we've done in mainstream media. They also helped develop a global public survey we ran. And this was a survey that we had 10,000 respondents across 13 countries that I saw has now been sent to peer reviewers, so hopefully I'll hear soon. And we included low middle income countries in Japan for the first time in this big assessment. And I think we learned a lot. The public are willing to participate in trials, but there's some trust and therapeutic misconception issues that we as researchers have to think about. So I guess some reflections. This is evolving unbelievably quickly. And we're going to get to the point where there's co-creation, PPI members in ICU leading trials and all sorts of things. Let's see what happens. But we do need to increase membership. We don't have the diversity of participants that we need, considering our ICUs. We need to get out more in the public and try and deal with disinformation, trust, all those things. And things like the kids trial are just a wonderful example of doing that early. We also need to further embed, but get PPI members involved more. And I really think SWOTs and methodology studies like what Heather's doing really will help us understand these things and that co-creation. I guess just to say to people, I get so many queries for people setting up PPI, like, oh, I'm really worried about it. What do I do? The thing is with PPI that's beautiful is there's no right or wrong method. Yeah, there's frameworks. Yeah, there's advice. You know, we're working on a joint task force framework for how to do PPI. But at the same time, once you're open, transparent, you know, and you give them the time and you treat everyone as an equal person with their own lives, their own careers, then you're not really going to go wrong. But it does require a lot of resources. For every trial steering committee meeting that a new PPI member attends, we have a meeting beforehand and we have a meeting afterwards to make sure everything is clear and everyone's comfortable until they're set up. So you just need to think about that up front. You need the funding to reimburse members. You need staff time to deliver it, to make sure that you're doing it meaningfully. And it involves a relationship. It's quite a vulnerable thing because they're sharing with you, so then you share with them. And I can't say that there's not been numerous evenings where I've been worried about, oh, I didn't get back to that PPI member, or, oh God, they said something, but I know that that can't be implemented in the trial. You know, so it's a lot more personal. But the main thing is the value is an active partnership. And I guess I just wanted to finish with, I have more perspectives than this, but this is two of our members' perspectives and then a perspective from a researcher. So this was an ICU survivor and their family member. So we were in ICU facing an uncertain outcome. A very warm team member asked how we were, and that's what PPI is. It's always patient first. They calmly explained the trial, and in all the chaos, I just remembered thinking, this is important. We feel privileged and passionate about PPI. It gives patients and families a voice and an opportunity to ask questions, voice concerns, and shed light on research topics, all from lived experience in a safe space. It's our way of saying thank you. Another member, again, another ICU survivor. Research gives current and future patients the chance not only to survive, but to find their way back to the life they had before critical illness. With lived experience, I can amplify the patient voice, and we can make research more accessible, open, focus on patient and family needs, and identify the best question. In PPI, the researchers listen to us, and our contribution is valued with mutual respect. And lastly, from a person who's setting up a new platform trial that we helped involve patients in to design it, it was such a help to have a group of patients and public representatives who are motivated, enthusiastic, and keen to deliver research for the benefit of others, but who also understood how to contribute in a meaningful way and were not afraid to voice their concerns. It's very obvious that the relationship is one of real partnership, and that's invaluable. And that's it. Thank you all. If anyone wants to reach out.